Hey everyone, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2024 Kia Telluride, we're going to be showing you how to install the Curt Trailer Wiring Harness. Before we do that though, let's take a minute, check it out, and make sure it's going to work for you. So with these Kias, you know, they're really popular SUVs. Being full size, people use them to do a lot of different things, which does include pulling some trailers around. And if that's what you're going to be doing, you need a way to power up all the lights. That way you're safe and legal. And so that's where a kit like this is going to come into play. It has that four-way flat style of connector, and we'll get all of our basic functions from it. So we'll have our turn signals, our brake lights, as well as our tail lights. There are a handful of kits available for the Telluride when it comes to trailer wiring. So you're going to have your custom fit kits as well as the universal type wiring, which is what we have here today. And it's hard to answer that question, you know, what one's going to work for your particular vehicle kind of across the board. But as a general idea, if you have an LED type taillight like ours does, the universal kit is going to be the one that you're going to want to go with. One thing you could always do as well, which I'll show you in the install, is pull a taillight out on your own vehicle and check the connector. It's pretty easy to do. It's not a huge deal. If yours looks something like this, so this is one of the custom fit kits. If your connector end is similar to this, where the little channels are on the side and not on the top, then chances are really good you're going to be able to use the custom fit style of kit. So it's really just going to depend on your submodel and what your vehicle is equipped with. Now, with that said, the universal style kit like this one will work across the board regardless of what submodel or type of taillights that you got. Other than that, at the end of the day, this is going to be a great way to power up your trailer's lights. As far as the installation goes, you know, it's really not too bad. You're going to have to, you know, tap into your vehicle's factory wiring. Everything's pretty easy to get to. It's not a huge deal. I do recommend picking up some extra wiring though, because this particular kit and how this vehicle is, there's enough wire there, but it'd be really tight. So I'd probably recommend picking up, I'd say at least 6 foot of 14 gauge wire should do the trick, and even some butt connectors, some heat shrink butt connectors. That's how I did it. The stuff that comes in the kit will work just fine, but butt connectors are a little more of a solid connection if that's something you're interested in. But speaking of the installation, if you're going to be doing this yourself, feel free to hang around. We'll go ahead and get started on it now. To begin your installation, we're going to be here at the back of our Telluride, and you can open up your hatch. That way we can get our taillights removed. So with these, there's this little panel here that's covering up some bolts. You can take a trim tool or a small screwdriver. Just be careful if you use something like that. We're just going to kind of pry in behind this here, and there's a couple of clips, real small clips, that's kind of holding this in place. So don't get too carried away. Just take your time and work your way down. So once you have all these released, let's see, that's what we were that's what's holding this piece in. So we're getting in behind it and kind of unsnapping it. Once you get this release though, you can set it off to the side out of the way, and then that will expose 3 fasteners holding our taillight in. You can use a 10mm or a Phillips head screwdriver. We'll pull those out. We should be able to grab our tail light, essentially pull straight back on it. There's some alignment pins back here, so if you need to, if it's fighting you, you can take another trim tool. Kind of going from there and get it released. Then we'll disconnect our wiring. So push down on the center of it, pull it apart. We'll set our light off to the side and do the same thing to get the passenger side one removed. Moving underneath the vehicle now, I temporarily removed our spare tire to give us some more room to work. You don't absolutely have to, but it'll definitely help. And just over here on the driver's side, we can get this underbody panel removed too, because this is where our, some of our wiring is going to be mounted and whatnot. So 3 push-pin fasteners. You can take a flathead screwdriver and pop those on out. And then kind of up here in this pocket, there's going to be 2 plastic nuts, 14 millimeter in size, and you can just undo these by hand. They're actually going to stay connected to the panel and just kind of unthread from that stud there. And sometimes you might have to put some downward pressure while you're turning it to get the panel to release. So back in the driver's side taillight pocket now, I've removed, there's some tape here on our wiring. I removed it and tested the wires. And so we have a 2-wire system. So the factory yellow wire with the orange stripe, that's going to be for our stop and turn signal. And then the factory green wire with the black stripe, that's going to be for our tail light signal. Now the wiring that comes off of the new trailer harness can work without it being extended, but it's a really tight fit. And so to make things much easier, I grabbed maybe a couple feet of some extra wiring. And what we're going to do is just take this end and drop it down through the tail light pocket. And this will just be so much easier to hook up. If you're not going to do it this way, you'll just have to go from the bottom and kind of feed up the some of the wires from your trailer wiring up to here. But we can now splice this in. On each end, I'm going to strip the insulation back a little bit, give that wire a twist. The yellow being the trailer wiring stop and turn. We're going to cut that into the yellow and orange factory wire. So I'll cut that about in half. Strip the insulation back on both ends here. Twist the wires. And so the kit, they give you quick splices that essentially you just wrap around this wire, or whatever wire you're hooking up, and then around the factory wire, and take a pair of needle nose and crimp it down to make that connection. I'm opting to upgrade to some butt connectors. I feel like they just make for a better connection. If you want to do that, you can always grab these and that extra wiring right here at eTrailer. But how I'm going to do this, I'm going to take those 2 ends, so one end of a factory wire and one end of the new trailer wire. We're going to twist them together nice and tight. I'll put on our butt connector over both of those ends there. Crimp it down. Get the wire in it. And crimp it down. And this is how we're going to make all of our electrical connections, whether it be a ring terminal or a butt connector. They're all going to work the same way. Since I'm using a heat shrink style butt connector, I'll come back with my heat source and seal up the end, and then do that exact same thing for our factory green wire there. Here's how everything turned out. Like I said, did the same thing on our factory green wire there. Tied our extra piece of brown wire in. Come back some electrical tape, tape all this stuff up for an extra layer of protection, and we can move over to the passenger side. Did the same thing over here on the passenger side, but a little bit different. Again, I used an extra piece of wire, extended it maybe a couple of foot. But over here, you just need to worry about the stop and turn. Over here, the gray wire, the factory gray wire with the black stripe, that's going to be our stop and turn. So we used our butt connector and tied into it. Once all the connections up here in the tail light pockets are made, we can plug our lights back in and reinstall them the opposite way that we removed them. underneath the vehicle on the driver's side. I'm going to secure our converter box here on this flange, just using a self-tapping screw. We're able to get our grounds hooked up now. So you'll have a white wire, and since we have a 2-wire system, the red wire is also going to be grounded. So I just cut the ends off and put them in one ring terminal. Or, you know, you can always leave the ring terminal that's already on the white wire and just use one of the quick splices to hook the red up to the white one. It's up to you. And I'm going to ground it in the same area. Up here a little bit further, the steel was pretty hard, pretty thick steel, so I drilled a small pilot hole, just a little bit smaller in the size of our self-tapping screw, and we'll get this connected. From there, I hooked up our yellow and brown wires. So you got the brown and yellow coming out of your box, and I just used butt connectors to hook them up to the brown and yellow wire that we dropped down from the driver's side taillight pocket. Pretty straightforward. And then you're going to have your 4-way flat wire as well as the single green wire coming out of the box. You can route that over towards the passenger side. So it just kind of went up and over our bumper beam. And right in this area here, actually right there, that's where I made the connection from the green wire that we dropped down on the passenger side to the green wire coming out of the converter box. The 4-way flat wire, I just dropped down right here and use the dust cover to attach it to the safety chain opening on our hitch. And as far as, you know, where that green wire came from, pretty much the same as the driver's side, just runs across and kind of goes up and over our bumper beam there. For the last bit of wiring, you're going to have a black wire coming out of the converter box, and that's going to be our power wire. So they give you a big bundle of this thick black wire here. You can use a butt connector to, you know, hook those up together. And what you're going to do with the bundle of wire is route this to the front up in the engine compartment. That way we can hook it up to our battery. So I'll go ahead and do that now and then show you the path that I took to get there. So I got our wiring ran. Now would be a great time too if you by chance are installing other components. So for example, this vehicle's getting a brake controller and a big 12-volt power plug and stuff. If you're doing stuff like that as well, you might as well route those wires at the same time because this is going to go up to the battery. So that's what these other ones are if you're wondering. But there's our trailer wiring power wire, and I push it up and over our subframe. And when you're doing this, do your best to avoid any hot or moving parts. So use the zip ties to secure it every now and again. And it just runs along through here. Right there, and then we had a panel, all right, that I took down. There's just a few 10mm head screws that you can pop out of it. It makes it a lot easier. And our wires just essentially follow some factory lines here. Essentially all the way up and into the engine compartment. It's pretty open down here, so usually you can just push the wires up into place and grab them from up top. If you're having a hard time doing that, one thing you can do is take a pull wire. So use like a metal coat hanger that you straightened out, or a piece of tubing, or whatever you got. Drop it down from the top and come under here on the bottom side, tape the power wire to it, and then go back up top. That'll allow you to pull it right into position. This is where our power wire came up, and I trimmed it to length. And you can take the included fuse holder, crimp that on using a butt connector. Then on the other end, crimp on a ring terminal. Make sure your fuse is not installed just yet. And we're gonna hook this up to the positive battery terminal. So right there, we can remove this nut with a 10mm size socket. Carefully slide that ring terminal over it. Get the nut started again, and we'll tighten it back down. What's left to do under here now is take the fuse, make sure it's lined up, and put it into the holder. It is a good idea to test your wiring to make sure that it's working properly. So I like using one of these testers as opposed to just plugging into a trailer. That way, if your trailer has any issues, it might mislead you into thinking it's something you did on the vehicle side. With that in mind though, we'll turn on our left turn signal, our right turn, we'll hit our brakes, and try out our running lights. Put your spare tire back into position and just re-secure that underbody panel the opposite way that you removed it. I'm gonna hold off on that for now because I got some more work to do under here with our trailer brake controller and stuff. But everything will go right back up, and with that done, that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Curt Trailer Wiring Harness on our 2024 Kia Telluride.